This is a great drill to develop the necessary skills, the basic skills, the fundamental core skills for the use of the partisan in the Bolognese style, the Bolognese partisan. A couple things to understand first, before we show that, is that your partisan, when you're selecting one, having one put together, or making one, that it shouldn't be too long. This is about the length of it, the length of your outstretched arm above your head. It is not as long as a spear, so don't take a partisan head and mount it on a 8-9 foot long pole thinking longer is going to be better. It's not, and partisan is not the length of a spear. Mancellino said so explicitly. Partisan is a shorter weapon than a spear is. Now, the drill, as I say, core skills, really is predicated upon how you hold a partisan. A partisan is not held like a spear. So, looking at the spear, particularly with Morozo, because Morozo is the main focus of my discussion today. So Morozo describes spear work in terms of the pike, pica, and the lancia, spear. So pike or spear, and pike could be as long as 18 feet or longer, and a spear, we're talking about a generally long spear. By contrast to what Mancellino said is a lanciotto, a smaller spear. Morozo says to hold it above your arms. Above your arms. And so if you look at any historical image on how to hold a pike, it's held in a manner like this or like this, above the arms. And you'll see the actions of the spear in Morozo resemble something like this. There's no sliding, especially if you imagine this being a pike, being 18 feet long. You don't slide your hands around on that. You keep them stationary, fixed at the butt end of this. And consequently, the way to parry with a spear is this manner, called by Morozo a mezzovolta. Now, that method of parrying is also described for the partisan. He only describes that parry at the very end of the partisan play. In the beginning, he talks about something more primary, the partisan parry. So holding it at mid-haft, like I'm doing now, is the way that you're going to hold a partisan. This is a real example. This is a sharp example, and by the way, the fact that I'm holding this, do not take this to mean I'll ever advocate sparring with this. No, this is not about sparring with this. I'm using this to demonstrate how you hold it and why you should hold it a certain way. You're not going to hold this weapon out here. This is heavy. And the parry that Morozo leads off with is to raise the rear hand to the temple and then down to the belt without moving the front hand at all. This is very clumsy. This is heavy. It's awkward and it's slow, and it's not what he intended. In fact, the only image we have of Morozo using the partisan, he's got the lead hand very close to the haft. So holding a polearm mid-haft is mentioned by the Bolognese. Mancellino says it. Mancellino states that, going back here again, when you're holding a spear and you're faced with someone who has a shorter polearm, Mancellino states explicitly, do not hold it by the butt, but hold it mid-haft for your advantage. So, yes, there'll be times when you're going to hold a polearm mid-haft. They said so. And the reason they said so is because of the shorter weapons, like the partisan. Spiedo is also used in the same manner as a partisan. They're heavy. The iron, the front piece here, is much more weighty than a spear tip, and consequently you hold it with the front hand in the center of balance so that you can make this rapid, fast, precise parry. Furthermore, one more point. It's important to understand that a partisan is a close range polearm. That's also stated. In fact, the very first thing that we do in the partisan play of Morozo is move your point to one side and begin to press your opponent, getting closer and closer and closer to them until they are forced to attack you. That is the opposite strategy of a long polearm such as a spear. When you're using a spear, the objective is you can stay as far away as you can from your opponent and strike them from a distance without them striking you. Partisan's not used that way. That's not the objective. Get close to your opponent because you can make this fast parry and immediately strike them. That type of parry is never described for the spear, not once. That's because it's not plausible to make this sort of parry with a weapon outstretched in front of you by 10 feet with your hands at the very end of it. Not plausible. So, understanding how this is used historically is important. Don't introduce bad ideas into your partisan training because what you're doing is not representative of what they did. For example, taking a partisan and thrusting like this isn't a thing. That is not how you use partisan. And you're not going to know that unless you've handled a real one and understand the weight of it. It's easy to mistake that type of action when your partisan weighs next to nothing. Even worse, that sort of nonsense is nonsense. Let's never see that in any partisan work. Yeah, had to make the point. Stay away from what is not historical. Stay away from what is not plausible. Even if you don't have a weapon like this to understand its qualities, trust me on this. There's a certain way that this was used. Now, a drill that incorporates all the basic skills that you need to be competent at partisan fighting. It's not everything, and I recommend, number one, the play is the thing. Do Morozo's whole partisan play, but this is a nice drill you can use quickly and focus on the skills that matter most. First of all is the parry. So by raising only your rear hand to your temple or lowering it to your belt, this is the partisan parry. The parry, you'll see it done with spiedo, but you won't see it done with the spear. The rules of this are that you only move your rear hand, neither foot. He said, do this without moving either foot, and your weight should be distributed evenly, 50-50 on your feet. Don't move your front hand, don't move your feet, only move your rear hand. And when you do this, the tip of your weapon is making an arc down or an arc up. Don't raise them this way where the weapon is just traveling up and down. That is not going to work as a parry. So starting with that, your partisan parry, do a couple of those. Now make a thrust. This is not the good way to thrust because I'm not getting any reach. So in order to get reach, I'll discreetly move my rear hand, make my thrust, and I can return quickly. The front foot steps. When you make a thrust with a partisan, the front foot and only the front foot steps forward. So in order to thrust, bring the back hand to the rear, to the butt, to the heel, slide it through the front hand. Now you notice there's space between my hands. I'm not going to do it this way because all of a sudden I lose the ability to control the point. It's heavy. You need to keep your hands spread apart. And certainly never do a one-handed thrust. That doesn't exist. So parry, parry, thrust, return, and do a couple more parries because that's important. Now when you make your thrust though, add there the mezza volta parry. So parry, parry, thrust, mezza volta, and then return and a couple of more parries. So the mezza volta, where Morozo says to arch your back, throw your weapon over your head, turning both of your hands, It even says throw it above and behind your head. And he says in various places, arch your back and thrust your stomach forward. That's the parry I have to make when I've thrusted because I've got no other option. If you thrust, the only parry that you've got is the mezza volta, and that's the one he teaches. When you are in an extended position of having thrusted. So, partisan parry, up and down, thrust, mezza volta or spear parry, return, and a couple more. Then switch sides and do it again. So how do you switch sides? There is a way to switch sides described by Bolognese author. Mancellino talked about it. He was speaking about parrying a partisan thrown at you. He says, strike it with the butt end, stepping to the side, rotating your weapon back to its original position. And then there's another one thrown at you. Step, hit it, hitting that, and return the weapon. So there's a method by which you can quickly turn your partisan to the other side and get that point back online quickly and not extend your weapon way out in front of you, especially as heavy as this, way out in front of you, trying to do that and not have your opponent attack you right in the middle of that or interfere, hit your weapon, and knock it out of your control. That's not advisable. Keep it close to yourself. The whole point of this weapon is to keep it close to yourself. So the drill, and I think with this drill you'll develop skills to be competent with the partisan. If you're good at these things, you will be good. Parry, parry, thrust, parry, return, a couple more, change sides, parry, parry, thrust, parry, recover, a couple more. The spear and the partisan are two different weapons. Yes, they're both pointy objects on sticks, but that's where the similarity ends. They're not the same. They're not instructed by Morozo with the same play. There's two different plays. There's a play for partisan and there's a play for spear. If they were used the same, there would be a single play. How do we know this? Morozo said this. Morozo takes the weapons, the halberd, the poleaxe, and the bill. He said, and I quote, "I've studied these weapons, and I conclude that they're all used in a very similar manner, so I will give you one play." So there's a single play for the poleaxe, halberd, and bill. He combined all those three weapons into a single play because it wasn't necessary to have separate plays because they're so similar. He didn't do that with the spear and the partisan. They're not similar. They're used in different, even contradictory ways. So keep them separate in your mind, keep them separate in your practice. Keeping in mind your base position should be a 50-50 balance. Your feet are spread outward and holding it mid-haft, thrusting from here. It's also a very good practice to practice your thrusts. Slide, slide, return. So here, and always move only the front foot. As you see, this is not a slow action, but keeping in mind the weight of the real thing, even though what you've got is very light and doesn't weigh anything, when you practice with something that's the realistic version, you are constantly reminded of how heavy it is every moment. You have to pretend with these lightweight weapons if you want to be historical and if you want to keep it Bolognese. If you just want to do your own thing, then do your own thing, but don't call it Bolognese. One more point. If I'm faced with somebody holding a partisan in this manner It does not behoove me to turn my partisan into a spear. I will be at a disadvantage. I won't have the quick, effective partisan parry that my opponent will have. My opponent will start to encroach on me. They'll start to press me. My opponent will press me, and I'll want to attack, and then I'll fall right into the trap of the first part of the partisan play. If I turn my partisan into a spear, holding it that way, and I'm faced with a partisan, what was Manciolino's advice? When you are holding a spear and you're faced with somebody with a shorter weapon, to not hold it at the butt end, but to hold it mid-haft. There it is.